I would argue that there is no job security, but it's very easy to get complacent at the place that you work and start taking things for granted. Or we like to imagine that the opportunities that we have will always be there. And you know what? I used to have a fiance, now I don't have a fiance, right? So that just happens. Same thing. You used to work somewhere and now you laid off. It happens. So why does it hurt? Why does it hurt when people lay off? Well, sometimes it might hurt because you feel like your company, who might have told you everything was going good, and then they have to give you good news, you feel betrayed. Okay, that's one thing. Okay. Why else do you feel bad about like layoffs? Well, you had friends, right? Maybe your friends got laid off and you didn't. Maybe all of you got laid off and it just hurts and it's terrible. Here's another issue why it hurts is because you have bills, you have family, you have kids to support. And so when you get laid off, you got to be like, man, I got to find another job ASAP and like I need to pay my bills. The good news with a lot of tech companies is that a lot of tech companies, they offer severance packages, right? Whatever, I don't know like what every company does, but sometimes like after you get laid off, you still get like a severance package of 3 months or whatever. So you do have this buffer. Now, with that being said, I don't like to think of and counting on external forces to deal with layoffs, right? I don't want to assume that my company is going to have a good severance package. I don't want to assume that I'm not going to get laid off. And so for me, like going through this, I have to like kind of brought me back to my like, hey, I got to keep my sword sharp. So if you're still working, number one, and I know sometimes you can't control it, but make sure you're part of work that you do in your company that is actually like brings a lot of value to the business. So at least like that way, it's like if they do layoffs, maybe I might not be the first person to go, which is hard to control, right? So what can you control? You need to be networking with people, making friends and making connections. I'm a big proponent of going to meetups, getting involved in communities, talking to people, making connections is the best thing you can do. So while you're working, you should not be taking things for granted. You should be getting out there, making connections, introducing people. By the way, a lot of the people that like at tech companies, and Theo made like a really good video on Theo Ping GG, like you could check out his YouTube channel, but he mentioned like how a lot of the people that did get laid off from like big companies like Google, Amazon, like Facebook, insert your favorite FANG name there, they're back in the market, and guess what? They're going to be the first people to hire, right? They have the experience, they have the, you know, they worked at companies for a while. They might be senior engineers. They might get hired not because of their, like, obviously their experience, because it does matter. But the reason why they're going to be first to consider it in the job market is because they have connections. They have friends in other companies. They have relationships that they build. So they could reach out and be like, hey, like I'm laid off. Like, you know, what opportunities do you have? And they reach out to the network and they're going to be the first ones to get hired. So Theo made like an argument that using the old resume way where you just send blindly your resumes doesn't work, and that never worked for me, so I'm not surprised. But what works is referrals and recommendations. You could probably still use recruiters, but referrals to me and making connections number one, because that's how you're going to find your next opportunity in a tough market. The biggest pain point outside of that is like where's the frustration comes from, you know, being laid off. It comes from, I'm not going to be able to get a job because I didn't stay up to date with things, and it's going to be very hard. It is very hard and very stressful, but sharpen your sword. Dedicate a couple of hours a week to be like, I'm going to make sure that I'm growing my network. I'm going to make sure that I'm getting the lay of like the tech jobs out there. I'm going to continue making connections. I'm going to research what are the interview process for some of the companies that I want to apply to. I'm going to start doing interview practice just for fun, because why not? Start doing practice interviews. So like time to time, go to interviews, you know, once in a while. Even if you don't get a job, or even if you do get an offer, you don't have to take it if you really like where you work, but you really do have to keep your sword sharp. And that way, at least with a couple hours a week, you're staying sharp and you're staying in the game. So when you get laid off, like probably the reason it hurts is because you just not like, oh, I got to go through this process all over again. And a lot of companies do give you these nice severance packages, but a lot of times like companies don't give you anything. And that's another reason why it hurts, is because you might be in a financial situation where it's like, God damn, I can't pay my bills. What am I going to do? And that's a reality for a lot of Americans. And I can't even imagine what it's like in other countries. So as a human being, as an adult, as a person, and again, I made all these mistakes that I paid for dearly. And I'm not telling you like, I'm an expert, listen to me. I'm telling you like, holy I made that mistake that really messed my life up. Oh God, I hope I don't make it again. And then I made it again. And so another thing, that really good thing outside of everything that I mentioned to secure yourself from layoffs is to be financially responsible. And so what people, like the bare minimum, what people should do, because you're not guaranteed no severance package, right? So don't expect it. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you don't. But as a responsible adult, you should think about, hey, what would happen to me if I lost my job, right? How long can I survive? If the answer is like, I can only survive 2 weeks because that's what my paycheck from last 2 weeks allowed me. Okay, so your survival rate, 2 weeks, okay. Keeping that in mind, it's like, wow, I gotta take some sort of responsibility. Maybe I should have bare minimum 3 months of emergency living expenses that cover my bills and my lifestyle at a minimum. That if I do lose my job, at least I have a buffer of 3 months to be able to look for a job. It's like, maybe this is something important. And so that's kind of what I did. I got 3 months of a bare minimum living expenses saved up, that if I lose my job and I don't get a severance, for next 3 months, I'm going to be okay. If the most painful thing about layoffs is like, I don't know if I'm going to get hired again because the interview process is hard. So what did we learn? Keep growing your network. Weekly, you should dedicate time to sharpening your skills, like your interviewing skills. And you should be, for fun, applying to jobs just to go on but real interviews. Be in the game, right? Even if you do it like once a month, it's still better than nothing. So keep your sword sharp. And what's the second thing? Well, keep your shield ready. The second point that really hurts with layoffs is like, I don't have any income coming in. How am I going to pay for my bills? How am I going to do that? Like, well, this is where you take responsibility in your hands. I know this is hard, but ideally this is what you want to do. I started with saving 3 months of living expenses, having liquid cash that if I do get laid off for 3 months, I could at least survive for 3 months. So now the way the economy, the way things are, I'm literally trying to get to 6 months. And this is why it's important to have your debt under control. And again, I'm speaking broadly here, mostly for like Americans. I know in other countries is way harder and it's different, but just for the sake of this, I'm literally just speaking from being in the country that I live in. So my advice might not be 100% applicable to everybody. I am aware it's very different and even more difficult in other countries. But so now for me, once I reach I have 3 months savings, but once I reach my 6 months, once I brushing up my interview skills, I'm going to feel way more comfortable about layoffs. And I'm not going to worry about if I get laid off because, hey, I have 6 months of living expenses. Hey, I built this network of people that I could rely and trust on. Hey, I have been doing mock interviews and going to interviews while working, not because I want to switch jobs, but because I want to stay in the game. Have your sword ready, have it sharp, and have your shield, have your moat. 6 months of living expenses. So now if I get laid off, yes, I'm going to be sad. And yes, it's going to hurt, but I'm going to be able to deal with it because I'm not going to be worried about, I don't have money to pay my bills, at least for this next 6 months. And I'm not going to worry too much about, hey, like the interview process is going to be hard. No, because, well, right now for me, interview process is going to be hard. But this is the change that I made after seeing what's happening with the economy, seeing what's happening in the tech industry, is that networking 100%, mock interviews, and going to interviews 100%, stay in the game. And so if I get laid off, like I'm going to be like sad because it'll break my heart. I love the company that I work at, but I'm going to be a little bit more prepared. And again, nothing in life is guaranteed, but this is just the tips that you need to do.